What up, what up, what up? I got a couple running backs that you should be avoiding for the 2024 fantasy football season. You do not want these guys on your roster, so don't make the mistake of adding them to your rosters. First up, we got Javonte Williams over there with the Denver Broncos. I'm avoiding him. He was a fantasy darling, a running back. We wanted him to overleaf Melvin Gordon for the starting job, and then he faced injury. Came back on a slow start last season, but my problem here is that he is not fitting the plans of Sean Payton. Now, we saw him take the RB1 workload, but he wasn't very effective. He had a low 3.6 yards per carry, 46% of the offensive snaps. He shared snaps with Samadre P. Ryan, who had 33% of the snaps. So there wasn't much there for him to get the RB1 workload that we all wanted him to get. I just don't think that he fits Sean Payton's plans. He obviously doesn't benefit from the passing game because no other team other than the Denver Broncos average more than 9 targets per game to the running back unit. And Samadre P. Ryan obviously benefited from that, and Williams did not. He ran more routes than Javonte Williams, and even when it came to Javonte Williams being in the red zone and the goal line duty, he shared that as well with Samaje P. Ryan, who had 36% usage in the red zone, while Javonte Williams only finished the season with 3 rushing touchdowns. So there's not much benefit here for him in the Sean Payton system, in this running back group, and I do not put the Denver Broncos out of question of them bringing in another running back through the draft or maybe even late in free agency. I honestly think Javonte Williams, man, he's going to be sharing this workload in 2024. So you do not want him in that range of where he's at right now as RB29. He's going in that range as a contributor to your RB2, which is a low-end RB2 for some rosters. But I think he's going to be a headache on your rosters and not going to be able to contribute the points that you are honestly looking for Javonte Williams, who's a RB1 of his team. I just feel as though that timeshare, that split in the red zone is going to hurt him massively next season and seasons on. Now, next up, it should be pretty obvious for Devin Singletary to be a running back you should be avoiding in 2024, being that he signed with the Giants. Just because there's a lack of competition behind him and he's looking at RB1 workload and he may be running a ton of routes because that's kind of the guy he's kind of been. But this O-line was one of the worst run blocking O-lines in the NFL last season, and I do not see the Giants adding many pieces through the draft to make this offense exciting because they still have a problem at quarterback with Daniel Jones, who's also returning back from injury. They also had visits from Russell Wilson. They may even draft a quarterback this year. Who knows, man? I just feel as though this should be a clear and obvious reason to avoid Devin Singletary. The ADP might look great. It might look cheap. There's no competition back there, but I am just not interested in Devin Singletary at all costs, being that this Giants offense has no spark, has no clear direction and plan of how to make this offense better. So Singletary, he's on my do not draft list. Nothing personally directly to him because he's a great running back. He's a contributor to the passing game. He's a contributor to the run game as well. A very efficient runner last season with the Texans, but I just feel as though he's going from a good situation to a worse situation, so there's no type of fantasy appeal here for me. Next up, I got DeAndre Swift. I'm avoiding him in drafts. I think this is a downgrade of where he's going in location with the Bears, being that they're still not quite sure what they want to do at running back. You still have Roshan Johnson, who you drafted last year. You still have Khalil Herbert there, who's a very pure runner. He's a guy that you can utilize in the passing game as well if you want him to. But DeAndre Swift coming into that mix kind of makes it a little bit more nasty. I mean, DeAndre Swift was great last year for the Eagles. Top 5 in rushing yards. He had 12 fantasy points per game. He was very effective in the passing game, but he had a career low in some of the targets and routes ran, but he's still a useful RB2 type of running back in fantasy. But I think, man, this is going to be where he takes the ground downgrade, where he's going to be a low-end RB2, where there's going to be some weeks where he's like an RB3, where he's putting up less than 10 fantasy points just based on the running back rotation. Last season, Deontay Foreman, Roshan Johnson, and Khalil Herbert each saw over 110 touches. This is where it gets messy at. You kind of had Roshan Johnson trying to get involved in the pass game, but he also was heavily used in the red zone and goal line duty as well, where you have DeAndre Swift, where he was kind of like the guy getting vultured by the tush push as well, where he suffered at. This may be another area where DeAndre Swift suffers at in the passing game, red zone usage is etc. I just feel as though it's just too many mouths to feed in this backfield, and the Bears still do not have it clear cut who's going to be their workhorse RB1. I know they got some new toys. You got DJ Moore there last year acquired. Now you get Keenan Allen. You're probably going to draft Caleb Williams. Everything looks shiny and brand new for this offense to be great, but I'm still not sold on who and what they're going to do at the running back position. Another running back that I think you should be avoiding with Cliff Kingsbury over there with the Washington Commanders now. I do not think Brian Robinson Jr. is safe for his usage and production in the volume that he was seeing last season with Antonio Gibson behind him. I think he was able to get away with that because Antonio Gibson obviously just was not fitting into their scheme, fitting in his role where he was going to be the backup running back. I think you bring in Austin Eckler, who is meant to be a 1-2 punch. I don't think Austin Eckler still has that workhorse ability to him, but I think he still could be utilized in the red zone, still be utilized in the passing game where he could be very effective, where Brian Robinson Jr. takes an absolute hit here of where he is going to be able to be efficient, where he's going to be able to be utilized as well. So I think Austin Eckler, having him in the building makes a huge dip in Brian Robinson's upside. So right now, I think that takes him out of competition as a RB2 for most rosters. He's down in the 3-4 range to me, being that he is a great explosive running back, a pure runner, a guy that gets it done through the air once you give him the ability to try to catch the ball. I definitely think, Brian Robinson Jr. is still a great NFL football player. I just think for fantasy, he is not going to be very relevant for a lot of fantasy managers. So do not go ahead and make the mistake of drafting Brian Robinson Jr. in 2024. Now, last but certainly not least, but he is on my list to do not draft in 2024. It is Jerome Ford for the Cleveland Browns. Now, they brought in D'Onta Foreman. We know Foreman is a grinder. Every single team and every single stop, he's given his all. He's been a running back that's been very productive with the limited of time he's on the field. I mean, he has 8 100 rushing yard games since 2021. That's more games of 100-plus rushing yards than your notable running backs like Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook when he still was out there, Najee Harris, et cetera, et cetera. Foreman is a guy that's stepping as an insurance policy if Nick Chubb is not ready to come back week 1. And I think he takes in the role of Kareem Hunt, where we saw Kareem Hunt get utilized in the red zone, where he was able to find the end zone more so than Jerome Ford was able to carry the load as the featured back. Now, you're going to get short yardage out of D'Onta Foreman. I think he'll be more relevant in certain areas of the field where Jerome Ford takes a hit. He still will be there where he has the PPR upside. He averaged 12 fantasy points per game. I'm thinking that he's going to get less than that in the fantasy finish, especially with Nick Chubb returning back from injury. He will be sprinkled in the mix as well. I don't know if Jerome Ford will be in a lot of fantasy starting lineups in the redraft and dynasty leagues. I just feel as though for best ball, he's going to be a roster clog. So this wraps up another great episode of RotoBaller Fantasy Sports YouTube channel. Please make sure you guys like and subscribe. Leave a comment below on what you guys think about the episode and maybe some running backs that you're looking to avoid in the 2024 fantasy football season. And you guys can follow me at Real Deal Fantasy on all social media platforms. Until next time.